Hi everyone, I'm Joy Rosa with Earthworks Acupuncture, and we're back with Kendra Sims. Last week, in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, we spoke on stress and how it affects our bodies according to Western research. And this week, we are diving into nutrition. Black, Indigenous, people of color are typically impacted by challenging relationships with food and body image. And many nutritional awareness organizations have been shedding a lot of light on the connections between historical violence, access to highly nutritional valued foods, and systems of oppression. And these relationships, in turn, have created a lot of complexities surrounding food and nutrition in the BIPOC communities. So we'll also be tapping into what TCM can offer in terms of understanding nutritional therapy, and we're going to expand more on that on Monday with Dr. Zhenbo Li. But right now, hi Kendra.
Hi, great to be back.
Yeah.
So on the side of epidemiologic research, a recent study that's been cited a lot kind of sheds light on this problem. It looked like it had a big number of Black and white adults in five communities across the country. They had asked about these people's eating habits, and since they were free of heart disease at baseline, they were looking to see, based on people's eating patterns, who went on to get heart disease over approximately a 6-year period. And just looking at the data in this big group of people, they identified what they defined as a Southern dietary pattern. And those people had about over 50% higher risk of developing heart disease over the next 6 years compared to people eating any other way. The researchers defined the Southern dietary pattern as fats, fried foods, eggs, organ and processed meats, and sugar and sweetened beverages. So, I mean, it sounds to me like, mac and cheese, chitlins, and sweet tea. So a lot of nostalgia, actually.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, all the good stuff. Maybe some collard greens with a ham hock in there.
Collard greens.
Yeah, I'm a collard green person. Other findings from this study that it looked like the people who were really eating the Southern dietary pattern were the Black participants, the men, and those who were earning less money and had fewer years of education were more likely to eat this way than people who had more education, or women, or people who had graduated from college.
Oh, no, this reminds me, this morning I actually read an article from The Atlantic, and it was entitled "The Coronavirus's Unique Threat to the South." And I think you're really hitting on a few of these points, right? Like due to high rates and conditions of lung disease and heart disease and obesity, people living in southern states are more at risk if they get the virus. And actually the vice president of Kaiser Family Foundation in this article said that these aren't, quote, people who are sick, but these are people who also have underlying comorbidities that put them at higher risk for serious illness if they get infected. So I think you are touching upon some of these things, like healthcare disparities are pretty major in the South. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're seeing an uptick more with dietary patterns and therapies that just aren't working.
Oh yeah, and I mean, the researchers just named this. They named it Southern dietary eating pattern, but I'm sure that's a common diet for many people across the country.
Right, it's the SAD diet. It's the standard American.
Yeah. The reason a lot of pushback against this article, like, is that really a Southern diet or is that just an American diet? Yeah, and this study also brings up a lot of limitations in when we do these observational studies, especially of diet. There's just a lot of issues that people, like in the study, were only asked at one point in time how they ate, and that was supposed to represent how they ate for the next 6 years. But it's just also people, besides maybe not remembering. Maybe if there is a researcher in a coat or, asking them very specific questions, they might know what the researcher or the doctor wants them to say. Mm. And so they'll change their answers, which is another common things that happen in a lot of these studies.
Oh, so like the actual numbers in the study might be skewed because patients are typically feeling, for lack of a better term, judged, right? Like if they give a wrong answer, then it's considered a bad habit, or that their behavior is bad, or
Might not be reporting correctly, especially among the unhealthy, on the unhealthy side. But even the study found that people who had more education and income were less likely to eat this way, or at least they reported they were less likely to eat this way. So there's probably a lot of things going on. Maybe they are really eating very differently, or maybe they know not to say that, or maybe everything else they have going on for them in terms of money or education is kind of counteracting that.
Yep.
Yeah, that diet, is important, but in a lot of research, it's made to be like this factor that exists in and of itself, when we all know it's like tied into a lot of other things, including your culture, your stress, your background. So
Yes, exactly. And just like, right, like people who have been, or cultures and populations that have been notoriously shamed for a multitude of things. Right now we're really trying to kind of flip that narrative surrounding food access, food justice, and nutritional wealth and value. The pocket of healthcare disparity that you might um, uh, be in, it's mostly because of like this is what we know, and this is all we might have access to.
yeah, definitely. And a lot of those things you were talking about, they didn't measure in that study. Maybe they didn't measure someone's like sense of, oh, can I even make a meal? How do I live in a food desert? Could I even afford to live or go and buy food that was any different, or cook for myself? So a lot of those things were taken into account in the study.
That's good, because the why behind all of this is really what people need to be reaffirmed, that, we are doing what we can do with what we have access to, right? Because we've far too long been denied access to, healthcare, and even compassionate answers within the frameworks of healthcare. So this
Yeah.
sounds like
I,
a good study. I'll link the study once you upload the video.
Yeah, and there has even been pushback within the field against these observational studies. So there was a link of a Stanford dean who said, "Hey, the way we treat nutrition and epidemiology, there's a lot of flaws and problems." So,
Mhm.
so yeah,
One of the takeaways, I think, right, would be that this is practice, right, not perfection. Instead, right, you don't have to be perfect regarding meals, or glorified leftovers known as meal prepping, or you know just practicing a healthy habit, one healthy habit a day, right? I think it takes 21 days to establish a new habit. So maybe that extra cup of water, even, that would be a really good place to start. Some water with some lemon.
yeah,
um,
yeah. I mean, for myself and a lot of people, we have to learn like true hunger, and also like, am I thirsty and I'm hungry? Is my mind hungry? Am I bored? So there's a lot of that that's going on and under addressed in research and in healthcare.
yeah. So this article again, can you talk a little bit more about like where it was from?
This was the American Heart Association.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And so they definitely have a focus on heart disease, and it's a lot of prominent researchers involved. So this is a step in the right direction to just identify how people are eating, but like every study's, building on top of another. And so I hope that future work kind of takes these more issues of identity into consideration.
Right. Yes, and just access to healthy foods. You had even mentioned, food deserts,
Yeah.
and yeah, the community that I came from in North Carolina. I mean, we were really trying to make great leaps and strides into addressing these food deserts with new grocery co-ops in specific parts of the city. Um, I think it's a little bit harder to maintain those kinds of things. And you also have to consider, right, like right now, especially in the time of coronavirus, when you are, say, on SNAP food benefits or something, to also really be mindful about the days and the dates that these food stamps are given to households. And this is their window of opportunity to have as much access as they can. And so if you can, check with each of your states or counties and see when SNAP food stamp recipients are able to, one, receive their stamps, and then two, go shopping for their groceries, because they might be on, the very last, tier of however much they are allotted. And they are the ones that need the most access to this right now. And then you can wait, get your bare necessities until, we've gotten our meals and our food. Vital qi in foods, from a TCM perspective, are a little different than I think what we know as, especially in comparison to the standard American diet. In Chinese medicine, every food and herb has a nature and a flavor, and also an organ system and a meridian channel that they're associated with. So, right, just to break it down a little bit, and we'll go more into this on Monday with Dr. Lee, but the nature of the food describes the effect of the food that it has on the temperature of the body, right? So like the nature of ginger is warm. It has a warming effect on your body. The flavor actually, though, describes the taste. So ginger might be warm and sweet, or warm and a little bit bitter. So that would be the taste. And instead of viewing meals as like a breakdown of, right, like when we're learning elementary nutrition and you have like the plate, and there's proteins and carbs and fats, and Chinese dietary therapy actually utilizes those natures and flavors of foods as a guide for a well-balanced meal, right? So you might want, say, if you have an upset stomach, a fairly bland or neutral diet with some warming aromatic foods in there if you are congested. So yeah, just like kind of learning how to, I just love the theories around Chinese medicine and nutritional therapies, because it really gets you into the kitchen in a creative way. In Chinese therapy, eating with the seasons has a really profound impact upon a person's well-being. So eating according with the seasons has an immense influence on your body, what your body can do, and the influences that it has come under in terms of climate or region where you live. So all of these things are kind of encompassed within Chinese therapy, dietary therapy.
Yeah. I learned a lot, though. I was like, oh. I definitely learn something every time. So yeah.
I do, like, again, we'll go more into some dietary therapy stuff on Monday, but I really appreciate you coming on here and just kind of touching upon the nutritional aspects and case studies and studies that are behind how we view nutrition in the United States. I mean, it is really something to be unpacked and unlocked, especially at this time in quarantine. We are now able to learn new recipes and try to makeshift ways to really stay healthy at this time.
Completely agreed. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kendra. We'll talk soon.